Moving ahead now, if anyone is condemning the federal government for closing the country's land borders, it certainly is not farmers.
While neighboring African countries and border communities are groaning under the impact of the border closure, farmers are smiling to the banks. Poultry, fish, and rice farmers say that they are experiencing a financial boom as demand is rising as the importation of products has reduced.
Now, they noted that if properly managed, the agriculture value chain can contribute tremendously to the national economic development and reduce unemployment.
Joining us now is an agriculture expert and entrepreneur, John Akerele. Good morning, John. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. While we were reading that, you smiled. I wonder why you were smiling. Are farmers not smiling to the bank? Because they have said that they are ready to do the needful to ensure that they bridge the gap when it comes to, this issue, the demand and supply of Nigerians. I wonder why you're laughing.
At times, when I hear things like this, I just laugh because it's far from the truth.
Really?
Yeah. In a case where people say things that is not even correlating with the present day reality, then I shake my head and I smile. Now, when farmers are saying to you that they are smiling into the bank, the question they should ask again is, are we self-sufficient in terms of food?
That's why they are saying they are ready to do the needful, whatever it takes.
When you say you are ready, are you saying you are ready now? Can you produce the food now for Nigerians to eat? No. So these are things that they are right policies, but wrong timing, wrong approach. And that is not the best way to go. I've said it times to that number. Border closure will have adverse effect on the poor masses, the poor Nigerians who do not have the high purchasing power. Now, when you say you are closing border because you want to curb smuggling of rice, I quite agree you want to curb smuggling of rice. But in that case, have you looked at how to meet up the 3.0 million metric tons of rice deficit as demand as a country, Nigeria? Are farmers looking at how they can meet that gap? Is the rice farming sector of Nigeria getting the proper funding? Do they have the technological know-how as to the present-day practice of rice farming in the world? Do you have people from here in Nigeria travel to Thailand to see how they do their own mechanism and how they have polished rice exported all across nations of the world? The answer is capital no. So when all of these things are not put in place and you say you want to close the border to curb smuggling, I just shake my head and I lie.
All right.
Now, when you say millers...
But John, sorry for interrupting you. Let's look at it from another perspective. The point there is, the issue of curbing or reducing smuggling is one of the reasons. How about the other reasons for closing the border that doesn't border on agriculture, especially when you talk about the issue of small arms? It is one of those reasons. When you talk about the issue of cars, is one of those reasons, and all of that. All these things at the end of the day also have an indirect impact on agricultural production too. Don't you think so?
Yes, it does. But like I said, I'm more particular about my agricultural field.
Okay.
Now, in a case where we look at Nigeria, Nigeria is an import-driven country. Our economy is based on import. So in that case, you can't just do total closure of a border because it's going to have adverse effect on the populace. Do you understand? Now, let's take rice as a case study. When you say you are doing that for rice, the question is the millers that are saying that they are happy now. What is the quantity of the rice they can mill in a month? Now, will that be able to solve our local demand as a country? No. Do we have proper yield of rice plantation in this country as in Nigeria? No. So, when you say you are closing that, I don't think you should close that totally, but then it can be gradual. Now, increase the output, that's our rice production, from 3.7 million to about 6 million. Then we have a deficit of 700,000 metric tons. That's still better. Then people can go for alternatives like pasta. But in a case where we don't have that and you are closing that, I've said that before, it's just the same case of ban on tomato period or tomato consideration, as may say. We have deficits. And then you are closing the border for bringing in that.
Okay. Now, when it comes to smiling to the bank, a lot of... I wonder if you just left the bank this morning or you'll be leaving to the bank this morning.
I've not been to the bank in a long while.
No, but anyway, the idea of the fact that the borders have been closed, let's be a little more strategic now this morning. the borders have been closed. That's a fact. Right now, there is a shortfall in the supply of rice and some of the agricultural products. That's a fact. The issue of falling back on the local producers of all of these things, that's a fact. But when it comes to meeting the demand, it is a very long way when it comes to the numbers and the statistics. That's also a fact. But what should we be doing now when it comes to that deliberate, steps to say, okay, let us try to see how we can ensure that the one who was producing 2 metric tons before, 3 metric tons before, increase yours, and let's come together, let's be more strategic. What can be done in that regard now?
What can be done is that political will. We are still lacking that.
Why is it falling down to politics?
Now, it's because the government has a major role to play in this regard. Okay. Now, the government brought about the policy to close the border, and it's affecting everybody. That shows the power of the government.
But then, on the other hand, if the farmer is a business person, should he not take advantage of government's policy in that regard?
But in a case where the farmer is incapacitated, what can he do?
Incapacitated? How is that?
In that regard, now the question is, some farmers are still having issues of power, some are still having issues of funding, some are still having issues with technical know-how, some are still having issues with latest technological trends as to farming. So when all these gaps are there, the gaps are just too many for you to say you want to increase the yield.
In terms of financing, the government came up with the anchor borrower scheme. Why are farmers not taking advantage of that? And if there are issues, how are they engaging government on this?
And I've said it times that number that the leaders or our government officials are far from the reality. When you say you have given out anchor borrowers program to give out funds, how many of that funds actually get to the real farmers? That's the question to be answered. How many of the fund is dispersed? Is it monitored? Do you really visit the farms to know?
Are farmers engaging government on this to ensure that these funds get to them, knowing that this is meant for them?
From personal preference, I can say a good and big yes to that. Yeah, but the point is this. What the government should do is to see how they can cover all of these loopholes. Put in more funds, get in more trainings, help improve the technological know-how, and help farmers' exposure as to latest trends of farming.
But government cannot do it alone.
Now, it's not only for the government, it's for the government and the people. Like the case of rice, a case study. Now, when Nigeria produces rice in a large quantity, the government is the highest employer of labor. So it means that the government will be a bulk buyer of that produce and then can look at distribution. If all the governors of the states can say, we want to do rice plantation in each of the states, do you know what yield that will come from each state? Then across that 6 states. In Nigeria, we only have 8 states that produces rice. Out of these 8 states, 6 of the states are flood-prone states. And they have experienced flood now. I wonder what they are going to harvest in December.
That's going to have impact on the... But the point there is, another question there is the issue of rice. Why rice? It seemed like we're putting so much effort into the issue of rice. The previous dispensation, there was the issue of cassava and so on.
Bread.
Why are we not consistent as a country with certain products or certain crops that we naturally... We remember in the 80s, nobody has forgotten the groundnut pyramids.
Absolutely.
Nobody has forgotten the millets, nobody has forgotten... these are things. The cocoa and the palm fronds in the east. These were all crops that not only help us sustain this country as an economy, there were also ways of, helping at the subsistence level. Why are we leaving all of that and focusing so much effort into rice?
You see, rice is a staple food that almost every family in Nigeria will have one of their meal in a day to be rice. That shows you that it's highly consumed in Nigeria. And now that we have this strict measure, people are looking for alternatives. Now people are going for pasta, okay, as against rice. But the point is, what you have on ground is still not enough to meet the demand, and so there's going to be hike in price. Although when you talk about border closure, it has its own gains, and part of the gains is that they are trying to tackle illicit trade, which I agree, but there's more to it than the illicit trade. So we need to look at it. If the losses we are gaining or recording when it comes to border closure is higher than our gains, then our policymakers need to sit down look at it, take a review, and then look at what we can do gradually.
The federal government has been focusing on diversification, and agriculture is one aspect that it has been looking into.
Yeah.
And now we have a closure of the borders. How do we begin to address issues of the shortfalls, taking advantage of the border closure and ensure that especially rice or any other produce that Nigerians are looking to for, making them accessible and affordable to Nigerians? How do we address these issues?
One of the ways we can address the issue is looking for alternatives. In a case where you are not able to get rice, can you get alternative to rice? So we as people should be looking at getting alternatives to rice. And but the government, on the other hand, should look at what are the mechanisms that are working for the agricultural sector and then see how it can be enhanced, okay? If we are putting in more funds into the agricultural sector, let's pump in more funds so that it can increase the yield.
Is it about pumping more funds?
Yes, absolutely. It's about pumping more funds because we have funding as a problem when it comes to rice plantation. We have infrastructure as a problem. We have access to road as a problem. We have storage as a problem. So there are so many issues when it comes to rice plantation that those problems are not solved yet. So the government should look at solving those problems, one. Two, the government should look at how they can maximize the yield that are produced annually and how to increase that yield from what it used to be, which is about 3.7 million, to about 5 or 6 million metric tons annually. By doing so, you see that it will create more jobs for our populace who get to that stage of self-sufficiency as far as food production is concerned. Then when you do, now it won't be partial closure, it's going to be total closure of border and total ban on importation of rice specifically. Why? Because Nigeria as a country, we have gotten to that stage of self-sufficiency. And by so doing, everybody's fine.
But in true terms, if we have to face it headlong, do you see the possibility, the likelihood of Nigeria being able to produce sufficient rice for its citizens and even export?
Considering the population as well.
Exactly.
Now, Nigeria has the capability and the competence to produce rice for its population or our population and also export to other West African countries. Why? Because we are the big brother to other African countries. That means that we have the people, we have the manpower. Do you understand? So when that's why I said earlier that the political will is very, very important as far as this thing is concerned. If the government is really serious about this thing, then everybody can be a farmer. Every state can be a farmer. And before you know it, there's rice for everybody to eat in Nigeria, and we also start exporting, and then we can generate foreign exchange that we have been looking for all this while.
All right.
John Akirile.
John, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Right.